Welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something along the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. If you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening. Also, if you or someone you know would like to come on and have a conversation with me, feel free to reach out to me on the social media platform that you are on, because I am probably there. And the best way to find me is you go to isaacl.dev, and that'll give you a list of all the places. All right, this is a good one because I'm having a friend on, fellow speaker, fellow Microsoft MVP. I'm looking forward to just chatting about tech and all of the things about it. So today, my guest is Chris Woodruff. Woody, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Isaac. I really appreciate you having me on the show. We don't see each other enough, so this feels like we're just going to be catching up, talking about, and maybe filling in the gaps that we don't know about each other. Sure, so I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Do you want to do a little bit of intro for people who?
Yeah,
everybody knows who you are.
I'm an old guy.
You
know what? I always say I'm the old one of the old men in the community.
Sure.
If people, I don't know if this is on video or not,
it
but
is,
I'm bald. I've got gray beard. I've been around. Actually, you know what? I was around before the first .com boom. So before Web 1.0, I was at Michigan State University when this weird application called Mosaic came out on the Solaris machines, and we started wondering what this was, HTML and I'll talk about a little more about myself, but I will say myself and another guy, we created the first fan website, the first fan sports website on the internet. It was in 1993. It was a Detroit Tigers fan website, and we would hand type in box scores every day. And we went to Tiger Stadium, and we took a picture at every section, looking out towards the field at the top of every baseball section in the stands. And it was right after image web. There was a new feature of HTML that just came out where you could you could vectorize a image, and that would translate into a clickable section of an image in HTML. And so we took pictures at the ballpark. You could click on a section of a scanned in picture of Tiger Stadium, and it would show you an image, and we would keep track of scores and schedules and stuff like that. And I didn't really realize how big the internet was going to be.
Sure.
If I did, I maybe would be a billionaire right now.
Yeah.
But I always say I was inside the tornado, and when you're inside the tornado, you can't see what it looks like from the outside. So I just didn't realize it. Plus, I was a pretty poor young man. All I wanted was a job.
Sure.
So yeah. But then I got in. I did lots of consulting. I've pretty much done everything you can do as a person in tech. I haven't done customer support. That's about the only thing I haven't done. So I've been a developer, I've been a DBA, I've been a database developer, architect, trainer, content creator, developer, advocate, leader. So you name it, I've probably done it, and done pretty much everything on the Microsoft stack except for SharePoint.
You're missing out. SharePoint's the best, man. I used to be a SharePoint developer. It was a grand time.
Yeah, well, no, I had friends that did it, and they made good money, but they were frustrated.
To
hack it.
So there are a few things I definitely want to talk to you about. One, you and I have both this affliction where we both love baseball. We've talked about this a few times.
Yes.
And we're going to get into that because I think that there's so many great things that like technology has done for the game of baseball, and I'd love to talk about that. But I want to figure out, like, first with you, Woody, how you got started. Like you mentioned a little bit, you're at Michigan State University, right? Go Spartans. And I want to know if like it was at that point in time you realized that tech was going to be this thing, or was it before? Like, did you get, like when did
Yeah,
technology first say like, "Hey, I'm here,
sure,
and it's going to take up the next 60 years of your life"?
sure. So I was 11 years old, and I got in a span of a couple months. I bought a TRS 80. So this was a starter computer that you could buy at Radio Shack. Um, I bought the tape deck to export and import programs. That's how you did it then on actual cassette tapes. And then my mom got me from a friend. She got me a first generation Apple II that had Apple Basic on it, and the TRS 80 had a basic language on it too. So I was doing a lot of basic. But I love that Apple II. It was so old that it only did uppercase letters. So when you did WordStar, which was the word first kind of big word processor, if you wanted to have the print, because I had a printer that came with it, you would have an inverse character. So say it was like the start of a sentence, that first letter would be an inverse, and then everything else would just be uppercase, which translated to the printer, uppercase meaning inverse and lowercase meaning just normal non-inversed uppercase. It was a little weird, and it didn't have a slot for a daughter board, so you couldn't get the 80 column card. I don't know if you remember all this, but I'm like I said, I'm old. So Apple IIs, the second and third generations, you could put in an 80 column card to go 40 columns to 80 columns, which was a kind of a big deal back then.
Sure.
So that got me into it. So I did that. I knew I wanted to be in engineering. I always wanted to be an engineer. I used to draw buildings and draw things. In high school, I took drafting and I took computer programming. So I originally went to college to be a mechanical engineering student and reached thermodynamics, which was kind of like a sophomore level class, and it was extremely boring. And I decided not to go into mechanical engineering. And I had taken a Pascal for Engineers class, which you had to program. The big project for that was you had to program a firefighter, forest firefighter program,
Hmm.
kind of like Life. It was, you remember the Life programs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
it was kind of like
I'm a
that.
little bit too young for them, like in practice, but I've heard enough about them that
Okay.
they seem pretty interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this was kind of a self-evolving. Forest fires would grow and start, and you had to program it to program your firefighters to put out the forest fires before the whole forest
Sure,
went
sure,
down.
sure.
So I loved it. It was a challenge. Fortran was an interesting language. So then I jumped over to computer science, and it's all kind of history from there. But I knew I wanted to be in technology. I just didn't know which kind of technology. So,
Hmm.
and ended up in computer science because it was kind of artistic and it didn't have a lot of rules, where things that are made up of matter and electricity, they have rules that come with them, and software doesn't really have rules. You can kind of program lots of different ways, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so. Did you know? Did like in one of the things that I'm very curious always about learning is that did you have like this natural tendency to like be very curious about kind of everything growing up? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
and the reason why I ask is I feel like almost every single conversation I've had, people have kind of said like, oh, I took apart VCRs, or oh, I did this, or I had like some, I mean, like you're talking about like the baseball like web page and website you built,
Yeah.
right? Like that is very much like I'm curious enough about this thing to have it completely encapsulate my life, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you know, I love asking this question as a follow up to like when did you realize like tech was it for you? When did you realize that there was good money in tech?
Well, yeah, that was a good question because so I graduated from Michigan State with uh, about 60 other computer science majors. And a few years ago, I talked to a professor and they were cranking out like 3,000 of them a year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there wasn't, computer science was not the cool, hip thing uh,
Sure.
to graduate in 1994. It was kind of a geek thing. It was I thought it was cool. I didn't really realize that there was good money in it until I moved down to Atlanta. My wife was going to school for graduate studies for her master's out in Seattle, and I was in Detroit for a year just working at a consulting company.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved down to her company was relocating to Atlanta. So I said, oh, let's go to Atlanta. And I started getting consulting jobs. And this was around 98, 99, 97 to like 2000.
Yeah, right when things
And
are starting to heat up pretty heavily,
oh,
right? Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I would get like, I had to turn my phone off at work because I was getting called so much by recruiters. And like every job I did, I was making at least 20 or 30% more than the previous
Yeah.
contract that I was working on. So I realized that that it was going to be big. Um, even when dot-com boom in like the end of 2000 and 2001, when no one called me for jobs and I was like scrounging and trying to find work, still making good decent money, but it was a little tougher.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, I realized in the late 90s that this computer application internet thing was going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always fascinated by the dot-com boom. So for reference, so I graduated high school in 2004.
Okay.
So 2000, like early 2000s obviously was crazy for people my age because there was MySpace, and then my first year in college, Facebook came out when it was called the Facebook and it was only available for
Mhm.
college students. So like the wave of like web 2.0 and then into social media was like a really big deal. And I've heard enough stories of friends of mine or people I've listened to talk about just how crazy it was. Here's a fun question for you that I just thought of. What was the craziest business idea during the dot-com boom that you remember and you thinking like, oh, there's no way that can work? And they made a bunch of money from it.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. You know, I, the craziest one was all these weird businesses that tried to model Amazon.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, like I actually thought the whole like groceries and that delivered to your house was like strange because I was
Yeah.
like, "What- who wants someone else to pick and to choose your cucumbers and your tomatoes? You know, you go to the store and you look at them and you try to figure out which ones are ripe. So that one was a little strange. And to be honest, that one I had a cousin who worked in Atlanta for, and I can't remember the startup name. It was one of the original big grocery
Sure.
delivery startups, but we were on the beta test.
Mm.
So this was around 2099 to 2001, sometime in there. And for about a year, we used to get every 2 weeks, get some groceries delivered to the house. And I it was convenient and nice, but I don't know. I guess for me, I must be strange. I like still going to the store and picking out things
Sure.
and making selections and stuff like that. But that one and oh, I don't, I'm trying to think. That throws me off. See, that was so long ago that I probably have forgotten half the startups that were around back then. But yeah, there were a lot of like strange stuff.
I just
But
remember like this
nothing
was
that no,
yeah. Sorry, finish what you're saying.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just like I remember like this is a little bit after the .com boom, but like I remember like when Amazon bought diapers.com. I remember because like diapers.com, like I remember I did there was like somebody did like a presentation when I was in college about it and like how like they had like robot automation in their factories and they did all this really crazy stuff. And then eventually they got into like a price war with Amazon and then Amazon ended up buying them. And I remember at the time I was just like something as silly as diapers.com like did like a like great marketing.
Yeah.
Like it basically did like all of the things that you were supposed to do in the .com boom and got rewarded for it. But like I just think of like there has to be just thousands and thousands of ideas that just failed. Like they made a bunch of money. Okay, go
I
ahead.
have the one. I have it. Do you remember QCats?
I
Those little
didn't.
devices that scan QR codes. You would hook them up to your computer, and they look like a sleeping cat. And
No, I
out
do
of
not
the
remember
front
this.
mouth there was a camera, and on top of the head there was a button, and you could. It was supposed to be for like magazines, so you would go and be reading a magazine, and your QCat would be wired to your desktop or your laptop. And when you saw an ad that was interesting, you would take a picture of the QR code. Like today, we use QR codes all over the place, but this was over 20 years ago. And they would give out, like, you had to like mail away or pay $5 one of these Q QCat devices. Maybe that wasn't the name. I think it was something like QR Cat or QCat or
Interesting.
something like that. But that might have been the weirdest at the time, the weirdest thing that I saw.
Yeah, I mean that time fascinates me because I just think of it as like you hear when you're in school you hear about like the gold rush or like when people were basically looking to seek their fortune and like it was literally like basically first person to find the thing got the money, right? And I
Yeah.
think of like that and I can only imagine what it's like, somebody wakes up, has an idea, and then, 6 months later, people are like slamming down their door, like trying to give them money for their silly idea, right?
Yeah.
And then the same token, it's like people think that their idea is great and it doesn't work out the way.
Oh, I had so many people calling me
Yeah.
in the 2000s asking me like, what do you think about this business idea
Yeah.
or this and that? And I would be like, well, I think someone's already done it, but
Sure.
you know what? If you can do it better, go do it. And they were always trying to like, well, why don't you do it with me? And I was like, well, do you have any money? And that was a big thing was, and I knew a few investors, and it wasn't super hard to get money back then. Um, I was almost too old. That was the interesting thing. In
Mm,
the 2000s, I was in my 30s, and
sure.
by that time, all investors wanted was 20-year-olds,
Sure.
people in
Yeah.
their 20s to come up with these ideas. Um, so
That's interesting.
so yeah, Yeah, yeah. But there was I knew a guy who who wrote this software for gyms, like gyms and gym memberships, and
Sure.
integrating with some of the early machines like gym machines and stuff. And he sold it and had enough money to buy a twin Cessna,
Oh,
which is
cool.
a plane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he had enough money to do all of his like pilot licensing and
Yeah,
training and
sure.
stuff. And he would fly from Atlanta down to the Bahamas on the weekends and stuff. This was before uh, 9/11,
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
could just take off without a flight plan and just start going places. So, but yeah, I remember a few people that made some money off of it. And didn't know anyone who made like millions, but
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean it's just great. Like I heard something the other day and it really stuck with me. It's like the saying was every new idea sounds absolutely crazy. Otherwise, it would already be there. It would already be have
yeah,
been it, right? So
yeah,
like, and I imagine you've had this in the past, right? You have a family member that's like not
yeah,
in tech and they're like, "Oh, I have this great idea for like an app or a great idea for a site." And they kind of explain it to you, and most of the time it's something that already exists they don't know about, and then you show them like, "Oh, like did you know this exists?" And they're like, "Oh, no, that's cool. Thank you for letting me know, blah blah blah." But sometimes the idea is like so crazy that you're just like, maybe, but then you kind of figure out some way to get out of it because you don't want to do a bunch of free work.
yeah,
Has anybody come to you with like a hey Woody, I have this idea for an app. Can you help me with it? And you're like, that might actually be something. And I'll start. So this was when I was in college, and I used to do like odd jobs for people. Like I used to help them fix their computers or whatever, and to make a little bit of money on the side. And this one guy he was trying to build a business around like an online, the best way to describe it is kind of like an online memorial service site. So like,
mm, mm-hmm,
so you basically, a family member had passed on, and like had things like guest books and like kind of, it was basically like a remembrance sort of site.
yeah,
And he was describing it to me, and I was thinking, I was like, oh, I mean, this thing that probably exists to some extent, or maybe like not all in one place. And he wanted me to help him build it, and I said yes initially, and then I found out that he was a psychotic person, so I stopped.
oh,
But
yeah,
like I immediately, but in my head, I was like, oh, this isn't a terrible idea. Do you have like a
yeah.
similar story?
So I have my best friend from college. His family owns a funeral home, and so they actually pay for a subscription that kind of goes on to their funeral home website that does memorials and kind of online obituaries.
Yeah,
So someone did make money from it.
sure. Yeah, hopefully not that
Yeah.
guy that I talked
So
to when I was in college, but yeah.
no. So I'm gonna pull baseball in this.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So I was down in Atlanta, and I did a contract for some telemarketing software to help out this guy. He used to play baseball, uh, and I cannot remember his name, or else I would say it. But he played for the Orioles for a number of years, and he
Okay.
played for the Atlanta Braves.
Okay.
And his claim to fame was he was probably the best player to ever come out of Wyoming.
Mm.
Uh, so he went to University of Wyoming, played baseball, then went minor and went up. But he was also for 1 year when the Braves went to the World Series, he was the National League Championship Series MVP.
Okay.
And I could prop Devereaux was his last name, but
Mike Devereaux. I
he
had to Google it. Mike
Mike
Devereaux.
Devereaux. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, great guy, very smart, very entrepreneurial, and we would sit down at lunch and talk about different things, and we came up with this idea of doing, you know, doing stats and doing hitter and pitching heat maps
Mm.
And so this was around 99,
Wow.
2000.
Wow.
And so for weeks, I think for weeks we talked about this. And I just, one, he had inroads at MLB, and
Hmm.
he did talk to people, and I think was so far ahead of where technology and
Sure.
where Major League Baseball was that they just didn't really get it.
Yeah.
But I kicked myself in the butt for not kind of staying on that, because that would have been interesting to allow hitters and pitchers to see like where they're more productive in pitching or hitting.
That's absolutely
Uh,
crazy because now, like, if you follow baseball, like, that is
yeah,
common practice, right? Like,
yeah,
I
they
mean,
show it. They show it all during
during the
games, and
broadcast, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like, if you're a
yeah. I
baseball
know.
fan, like for folks that are listening or watching this, like we're going to talk about baseball for a few minutes, but like, now like there's websites like Baseball Savant and there's StatCast and there's all these things that
Yeah,
exist. It's literally just like, here's all of the data that exists about baseball. Because there was a long time where baseball just had like counting stats, like home runs or runs or RBI, and maybe there were some percentages like average or whatever. And now we're getting into now we're in this world where those counting numbers aren't super valuable to grade how well a
no,
player is. Like they're part of the story, but now you have like advanced metrics and
yeah.
you
The
know,
Bill James, all the Bill James
yeah,
stuff that they talked about. If you read the book Moneyball,
yeah.
that's one of my favorite books. Yeah, all the really deep analytics for baseball. Yeah, I,
Yeah,
I I like I like that stuff to dig into that.
and I grew up with a dad that was a huge baseball fan. He grew up in New York, so like he was a kid when like during the Yankees in the '60s with like Mantle and
Yep.
Maris, and then like he lived in Queens, so like he got to experience like the Mets going from like the worst team in baseball history to like a World Series winner like in a few years. So like my dad always used to kind of instill like baseball with me, so I've always had this love of baseball. And I used to go to the library, and there used to be like this baseball almanac that was like 15,000 pages. That's an exaggeration, but it like had every statistical thing. Yeah, like had box scores from like every game in the history of baseball. And I would just look at it and just read through it. And I remember at some point in time, I was looking at something and I just realized like that all of it is like it's just very very fancy math, right? Like it's and I'm not a math person, but for whatever reason like the math of baseball like really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And my when I was in college, like I had kind of like a senior project that I had to do, so I built basically like I took the layman database, which is like a well-known kind of open like
Yep. I've
statistic.
used it.
Yeah,
I've used
we've
it
talked about it.
before
Yeah,
too. Yep.
yeah. And I built basically kind of like a baseball statistics site, kind of like
Yeah.
akin to like an ESPN or whatever, but like it had a bit more granular level of information, and I was doing stuff. And I remember my professor was like, "You really like baseball, don't you?" I'm like, yeah. And I never played baseball growing up. Like I did
Me
basketball and
either.
I did track, but I just
Yep.
really really like baseball. Um, so like I just thought it was like it's just very funny now that we live in this world where we have data scientists that work for baseball teams, and we have data analysts that work for baseball teams.
Yep.
And this kind of leads me into a question for you. It's like, and I kind of got a little bit about it with you're talking about, mapping out baseball, like, yeah, you're taking pictures and making a website about it. Like, what is it really about baseball do you think that really resonates with you to an extent where you wanted to take another passion that you had, which is like
Hmm.
technology, because you've done baseball related stuff for a bit. We've talked about
Sure.
like the baseball like stuff that you have
Sure.
on Nougat and whatever, but like what is it about
Yeah.
baseball, and why do you think that it resonates so much with you?
I don't know. Baseball is just that sport, and you know what? People can call it. It's boring and slow
Sure,
in
sure.
this, but baseball's the only sport that doesn't really have an ending. It could go on
Yeah.
forever if you and it it just is that sport where it's the hardest thing to do in sports is to hit a round baseball with a round piece of wood. It's
Sure.
the hardest thing in sports. That's why I didn't play baseball. I couldn't hit
Yeah, sure.
50,
Yeah.
let alone 300.
Yeah.
Um, I just loved it because, so here's the other thing. I loved baseball cards.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 70s. I started collecting when I was like 5. And I remember just being in the summer, getting $1, going ride my bike to the drugstore, getting some baseball cards, sitting on a chair on the back patio or something, opening up the packs and reading the back of the cards
Yeah.
and reading
Yeah.
stats. Like just getting a guy and reading about his stats and seeing his production over the years and saying, oh, he only played 50 games this season, so he must have
Yeah.
been hurt and
Sure.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was, so I think that, and my dad loved baseball. My whole family loved baseball. I was a big, as a kid, I lived in Pennsylvania and New Jersey for a while, so I was a big Phillies fan
Oh, okay.
and a Tigers fan. And like summers was listening to Ernie Harwell, the famous Hall of Fame Tigers announcer that who would be on the radio. So that really was my summers,
Yeah.
was being around like grandfather, my uncles at pools and listening to Tiger games. And it just is that game where you can always have it on in the background. You don't have to concentrate on it,
Yeah.
but it's just it's magical.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's kind of like Field of Dreams. It just, that movie really resonates where I've had only a few
Sure.
like
Yeah.
loves in my life, like my wife, my kids, but I love baseball and I
Yeah.
love computer programming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I don't know what it really is. I think that the fact that, you know, so the people say it's boring thing, but I also say there's something really elegant about you not having to pay attention constantly and still be engaged. Um, like you can bring your
what?
kid to a game and your kid
Yeah,
is bored and then
yeah,
something exciting happens and everybody's into it.
yeah, yeah.
Where
And
else? Yeah.
being at the ballpark is the most relaxed for me. It's the most relaxing, calming place that I can go.
Yeah.
Like we have a minor league baseball team here in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh,
They're
okay.
a Tigers single A
Yeah.
high A team, and it costs $20 to get right behind home plate.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I go, I'll take my kids or I'll go with some friends and we'll have a couple beers and a couple hot dogs. And you go home at night and your mind is just, after watching a baseball game in person, I feel relaxed. My
Yeah.
mind is clear. And it's kind of like a church for me. I can go and let everything go.
Oh, I get it. My wife and I are we have a season ticket planned for the Mariners, the Seattle Mariners. So we go to plenty of games, and I also like work part time there. So like I'm
No,
there. I'm there a
nice,
lot. Yeah. No,
nice.
it's. I mean, it's one of those things, and people ask me, it's like, oh, like you have like a full time like quote unquote real job, and then you do this. Like, why? I'm like, because I've never had a job in my adult life where I can go and do the job, and then I leave, and the job is done. I don't have to check
Yeah,
email. I don't have to like worry about what's going on the next day. I go there, I do the job. I get to hang out with cool people. I get to be at a baseball stadium.
yeah,
I get at times I get to engage with the players. Like it's one of those things where it's just like it just makes me happy. And I'm
yeah,
able to turn my brain off and just enjoy it, which, I mean, and not
yeah.
to get too
Well,
ranty, but it's like, you're not
yeah.
always in love with the job that you have,
No,
right?
and you're not. And I see you have guitars in the back, and
Yeah.
I know we have a lot of people in our community who are musicians,
Yeah.
and that's where they go to let go and let their kind of stress
Sure.
go. But yeah. So baseball's always been kind of that place where I could go and just veg out a
Yeah,
little bit.
just turn it off. Just
So
turn it
yeah,
off, which is, I
yeah,
mean, there's something to say about it being super healthy to just like completely just like wash it out. Like, we have, especially these days, there's 1,000 things going on at every point in time.
yeah,
And just being able to go there, like you said, you can have a drink, you can have a food, you can, and you can just watch a game. And there's 1,000
yeah.
things going on in a baseball game. And it's just great. And
Well,
yeah,
I love arguments. I mean, what other sport? I mean, I know there's arguments in football and
sure.
between
Yeah.
like coaches and the officials, but baseball is like there's hockey fights, and I love hockey fights too. But a argument and a bench clearing, quote unquote, brawl, those guys are really just pushing and shoving.
Oh,
There
yeah,
might be
yeah.
one or two people, but
Sure.
most of those guys are probably pushing and shoving and saying hi to someone else on the other team. It's
Yep.
just there are so many unwritten rules. I think that's the other thing I like about baseball is there's traditions and there's unwritten rules. Like you hit a home run, you don't watch it. You
Yeah.
start running.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, you just don't do things, and sometimes you have to do things.
Yeah.
You hit uh, uh, end of the game home run, and you got to come out and tip your hat to the fans from the bleachers or
Sure.
from the dugout. It's just a classic. I think it just signifies a lot of American society.
Yeah.
Um, so so I don't
Also,
know.
one thing that I resonate with baseball, and then we'll move on to back to
Yeah,
tech, because I imagine some people are like, "Come on
I
with the
get bored.
baseball."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think of baseball too. It's like the ultimate level of like being able to appreciate the success that you have. And I'll bring this back to tech with this. Like if you're a professional baseball player and you are successful 30% of the time, you're one of the greatest players of all time.
I
And
was about to say,
I think about this in tech too all the time. It's like we spend so much of our lives in tech like trying to fix things that aren't working. And you mentor people, I mentor people, and it's one of those things where people ask you if they're getting the tech and they want some advice, like, oh, what areas should I look into? Like, what are some things I need to do? Like, where should I be what classes should I take? Whatever, right? And
yeah,
I always like the first thing that I say is like, okay, well, what is your relationship with frustration? And people immediately say like, why would you ask me that? I'm not asking about like career advice, and I'm like, because there's so much frustration in tech, because not like that's put on you by other people, but just by how technology works. We spend, substantially more percentage of our time trying to fix things than we do solving things.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so it's one of those things where if you have a bug, you can spend hours working on a bug and you're frustrated and you got to go and take a break and come back. But then you get that dopamine drip when it hits and your build's successful, the
yeah,
UI is showing what you want, right? And that powers you through to the next time. And
yeah,
I equate that
yep,
a lot with baseball, where it's like the amount of frustration that I imagine a professional baseballer has over the course of their entire career, because again, 30% is excellent,
yeah.
right?
Well, and look at slumps. I mean, baseball players all go through slumps. I mean, it goes back to a rule that I always tell new people is you're going to fail a lot, but that's the only way you're going to learn. You don't learn just like in sports. I always, when I coached a lot of basketball, because I was actually pretty good at basketball in like high school and stuff. And so when the team lost, I always told them, you know what, you're going to learn more from this game than you did the previous game when you won.
Sure.
And I think that's the same thing in technology is I think when you fail and you have a bug and you fix that bug, you learn more than if you just whipped out some easy little app and you got some success, which
Sure.
is good. You want success, but you want to be challenged.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing with sports is I always told people, if you really want to excel in sports, find people that are better than you and play with those people,
Yeah.
because that's the only way you're going to get better. And I tell people in tech the same thing. Uh, if you want to be a great technician or a great programmer, great developer, great architect, hang around with people that are better than you. They
Yeah.
or have more experience than you. And you know what? That's one of the reasons why I got into speaking, because I wanted to be around people that uh, were, they might not have been smarter than me, but they knew a little bit more, and I wanted to learn from them.
Sure.
And but yeah, so I view there's a lot of lessons from sports that we can also bring into our work life and our tech careers and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah. So I really relate a lot of sports to tech in my career. Like here's another one. I had my varsity high school basketball coach used to say, practice isn't perfect. Perfect practice is perfect. You can practice,
Yeah.
but if you're not
Yeah.
practicing the right way, you're not going to get better. And I always tell people, if you're not learning the right way, like, and that could be different from everyone. The way I learn is to build things, to build, like that was how I learned HTML, was to build that first sports fan website. I have to build stuff. Like some people want to do uh like little training exercises. I find those, I'm not very good at those. I
Okay.
just don't get challenged. I just say, I'm going to build a business app with this new web technology, or I'm going to build a ski lodge. So I just build weird stuff. Like I built a ski reservation website just because I knew someone that worked at a ski lodge
Sure.
and
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
having a hard time. So I built it and I said, well, I don't know if you can use it or not, but let your boss know. And they never used it, but I learned a lot from it. I think I learned Angular uh, from that project.
Sure. No, I mean, yeah, here's a question for you too. Like,
Okay.
what do you appreciate more about tech? Do you appreciate the fact that you're able to solve problems? Or do you like the fact that you're using all of these things that really, how am I going to phrase this? I guess my question really boils down to is like, what is the thing that you like most about tech is the fact that you're solving some problem with technology, or is it some other like lofty thing, like you like
Yeah.
the idea of like connecting dot pieces and all of that? Like, I guess you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I like solving problems, but I like solving a problem that makes someone's work or life easier.
Sure, sure,
It comes down to that. I mean, we build software usually for, if you're at a corporation and you're building it because someone that either inside your company or a customer is having difficulty doing something uh, in a quick enough manner or efficient manner. So really, that's why I got, and I love building software, seeing people go, man, that is so awesome. It's going to make my job so much better,
yeah,
which is solving a problem, but it's solving a problem with a purpose.
yeah. No, yeah, I think that's what it is too for me. It's like the idea of like, and I've used this cliche analogy a thousand times. Like we're convincing like sand to be intelligent, right? Like, and I love that. One of the things I appreciate about you specifically is that you're also like very interested in like learning new things in tech. And I think that's one of the things that I've always really resonated with is that, tech's this evolving landscape. And, if you do the same things, like, sure, you'll probably be able to continue to find work or opportunities with that same thing, but eventually like you might lose interest or you might not be as passionate about. And one of the things that I've been following with you is like for folks that don't know Woody, he's been like a well-known entity in like the .NET C# space for a long time, and you started to kind of learn Rust more and more.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Yeah.
learn a little bit about that story and one, why Rust, and two, like what are some of the things that you think about when you're looking at new technologies to learn?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Why Rust? Be, so I every year I try to learn one or two things. I look ahead and I go, well, this year I'd like to learn, and in the past, sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed. Like in the past, I've said, well, I want to learn Docker or I want to learn Kubernetes. Well, this year, or about maybe a year ago or 18 months ago, I said, I want to learn Rust because I want to. In college, I did a lot of C and C++, and I wanted to go back to those type of languages that didn't have a JIT,
Okay.
that didn't have just-in-time compiling. I wanted to learn something that if I ever needed to get closer to the metal, closer to the CPU and all the hardware in my computer, I could. And Rust is one of those languages that you can get down really close to the metal, but it's not like C and C plus plus where it you can really get yourself into a lot of trouble.
Sure.
So the compiler helps you out a lot, and I just like I would say you have to learn new things to keep being alive,
Mm,
and I just like learning new things. I guess I I probably have a disorder where I can't focus on one thing for very long.
sure, sure.
Um,
We all have that,
but
my friend. We all have that.
yeah, yeah. But that was just Rust. Plus, it was kind of a new language. Um, and to tell you the truth, I thought, well, if I pick up Rust and I do maybe some talks, no one's talking about Rust.
Sure.
And so I did a talk at Rust in Copenhagen Developer Fest last year, and there's like 3 or 4 people now doing
Yeah.
Rust for like .NET developers. Which you know what it doesn't. Flattery imitation is the best form of flattery,
Yes. Yeah.
but but like today I just started a new blog post series on genetic algorithms.
Mm. Okay.
So I did genetic algorithms, which is a form of AI. So I think it's kind of cool that there are other things other than LLMs and what we think of as AI today. Uh, so think of genetic algorithms as evolutionary software. You have you put all your information into what we call a chromosome, like a gene,
Sure.
which simulates DNA, and you go through generations where your DNA changes and evolves, and you check it every so often against what we call um, a fitness function, and to see how well or how close you think it's coming to what you're trying to solve. Like a classic problem for genetic algorithms is the traveling salesman algorithm,
Okay.
where a salesman has 1,000 locations they have to transverse, and you have to figure out the shortest path throughout that 1,000 locations that are put onto a geometric map. And those were almost impossible problems 40, 50, 60 years ago because we just didn't have the compute power like we do today.
Sure.
And so that's a classic problem for genetic algorithms. Another one is NASA uses them for antennas on their satellites. So to have these weird antenna configurations that can help transmit or receive radio signals from the Earth. So yeah, so I'm doing like 37 days of learning how to do genetic algorithms, and
Interesting.
there'll be some GitHub software each week for whatever we're doing for that week in terms of the software that we're writing. So, but I just like doing I just like doing weird stuff, like doing
Yeah.
stuff that no one else like picks up on. So
Yeah, I mean it's I think that's really cool. Like, I mean, I have tons of envy as somebody that, because we were talking about pain a little bit earlier, right? Learning something new is extremely painful, especially if you're somewhat of an expert in something else. Like, you see something and you're always seeing it as
yeah.
like okay, well, I know that I can do it like this particular way, but now I'm being forced to do something a particular way. So how do you deal with that specifically?
Well, I love to humble myself. Well, I'm always humbled. I mean, I am not this ultra smart person. I just work a little. I probably work harder than a lot of people, but I'm not smarter than anyone. My brother got all the brains in the family. He's a pediatric neurologist.
Okay.
So uh, yeah, he's much smarter than I am. I didn't get good grades in school. Um, I just I am kind of I'm reading a book right now all around Mark Twain,
Okay.
and he was also this person that did find a lot of value in school. Um, I find value in school. I'm not saying that, but I find value in just learning about things on my own
Sure.
around me. So, and I always trying to I always try to, if you become an expert in something, you should always try to be a novice in something else and learn, because what challenge is there if you're an expert in something other than keeping that status of being an expert in that area,
Sure.
which isn't hard. What's much harder and much humbler and much more difficult is to start something new that you know nothing about or know very little about, and work your way up to try to be not an expert, but maybe knowledgeable about that topic. So that's what I do. And I'll tell you a secret. You want to know a secret,
Sure.
Isaac?
Sure.
I have no kids at home.
Sure.
So I
Sure.
have
Sure.
so much. So here's the other secret that I have right now. Do you remember before you had kids? And once you started having kids, you were like, what did I do with all that time? Like,
Sure.
I thought it was busy before I had kids. And once you have kids, you have no time. You have
Yeah.
no disposable time.
Yeah.
Well, two of my kids are moved out. One's in DC, one's in Pittsburgh. My youngest doesn't really want to be around us. She's a 19-year-old girl
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, home from college first summer. She's gone all the time. I have so much free time that
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to do something. So I'm trying to learn new things, because if I didn't, I'd probably drive myself crazy, and I'd probably
Sure.
drive my wife crazy. And it's learning about Rust and learning about genetic algorithms is better than playing video games,
Yeah.
which I have that addiction
Okay.
also.
Yeah.
So I try to learn stuff so I don't play video games and I don't drink bourbon all the time
Sure.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to just, we talked about this a little bit. It's like filling your day with things that bring you joy is super valuable, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if it's something as simple as like, hey, well, sometimes I like it when my brain hurts a little bit. Like, there's nothing wrong with that for sure.
No.
I just looked at the clock and it's like, oh, we got to wrap up soon. One of the
Yeah.
things that
I've got I've got a meeting in a few minutes, so I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So no. Let's just finish it up then. So I mean, we've talked about a few things over the course of the last hour. It's always great to talk to you, and I think one of the things that I would love to kind of end on is like, you've been in tech for a while, and you've seen the cycles of different things like hypes and those things not being as valuable, or things that are hyped and things that become valuable, or things that nobody really cares about that end up being kind of essential to how we do things. What are your thoughts kind of on the current trend in technology as it pertains to like, okay, well, AI is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And let's end on that. Like, where do you see tech going over the next year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah. I think just being a developer isn't going to be good enough. I think you have to, we were talking about before, you have to become a problem solver.
Yeah.
You have to think, you have to become an innovator,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what AI can't do. That is the one thing that AI cannot do, is dream up new ideas.
Sure.
It can
Yeah.
it can regurgitate ideas that already exist, but it can't dream up new ideas. And so for anyone out there, learn how to innovate, learn how and read. Like, I have a friend, Phil McKinney. He has a podcast called Killer Innovation, or Killer Innovations. And he was a CTO at HP for many years, but his passion was around innovation and coming up with new ideas. I think that is going to be the top skill in any career, not
Mm.
just technology, but really any career, is to see the future and see where things are going beyond AI, where AI can see, and coming up with those new ideas.
Yeah. I agree. Like, it's one of those things where we kind of have to start being researchers. Like, we're gonna have to figure out like what's the best tool for the job, and as we all know, there's too many tools out there. Um, so with that, like, this has been great, Woody. Like, it's always great to chat with you. I really appreciate you taking the time. For the folks that you're not following Woody already, I highly recommend you do. Best place probably is to find you on Blue Sky. Is that a good place?
Well, you can go to, so woodruff.dev is
Yeah.
my personal site and blog, where I have my blog, but probably Blue Sky.
Yeah.
So that's at woodruff.dev.
Mm-hmm.
And then just search for, on Mastodon, I'm on that.
Yeah.
And that is, just search for C Woodruff,
Yep.
and you'll find me there, and LinkedIn.
Yeah, and
So
I'll post some links in the show notes to all of those places. So
cool. Thank you.
I highly recommend folks, especially like if you're curious about learning Rust, like Woody's doing it for you. So follow along with him. This has been great, my friend. Before we sign off, do you have any parting words?
No, I just really thank you for doing this. So it's a good podcast. I listen to it, and I appreciate you just bringing good people on. Besides me, you've had a lot of really great guests, so I just appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's one of those things where I'm very selfish. This is an opportunity for me to chat with people that I usually would never
Right.
get an opportunity to chat with. So,
I love
or
being selfish too.
yeah,
So
or
sometimes,
friends that I don't get to talk to enough, like you.
yeah,
And
yep.
I want to thank you again for being on the show, and I want to thank the folks that tuned into this live, or the folks that are listening to this in the future. So my name is Isaac Levin, and this has been Coffee and Open Source, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. For my friend Woody, take care.